He stops at a patch of grass that looks like nothing at all, presses his nose down, and stays there, completely still, while you tug gently on the leash and say the words almost every owner says without thinking twice. Come on, let's go. He glances up for half a second, then goes right back to the exact same spot, and you pull again, a little more insistent this time, because there is a schedule to keep and this walk is not going to walk itself. If you have ever cut a sniff short because you were in a hurry, you have done the one thing your dog has been waiting his entire life for you to stop doing, and almost nobody realizes it. Most owners believe a walk exists for one clear purpose: exercise, movement, a chance to burn off energy and handle bathroom business before heading back inside. Under this belief, sniffing is a minor detour, something to allow briefly before redirecting toward the actual point of the walk, which is getting from one end of the block to the other at a reasonable pace. It is not an unreasonable assumption. Dogs do need exercise, and a walk that never moves anywhere does look, on the surface, like it is failing at its basic job. But here is the surprising part. When researchers actually studied what a walk does for a dog's mind rather than just his body, the sniffing itself, the part most owners treat as the interruption, turned out to be doing far more work than the walking ever was. In a study led by researcher Alexandra Horowitz, dogs allowed to sniff freely and extensively during a walk, following their nose at their own pace rather than being guided briskly along a route, showed measurable improvements in what researchers call cognitive bias, a way of testing whether an animal's overall emotional state leans more optimistic or more pessimistic. Dogs given unrestricted sniffing time approached an ambiguous situation afterward with noticeably more optimism than dogs walked the same distance without the chance to explore scent freely. In other words, the sniffing was not simply pleasant, it was measurably changing how these dogs felt about the world around them, in ways a brisk walk covering the exact same ground never managed to replicate. You have probably felt the tension of this yourself without having language for it, that small internal pull between staying on schedule and letting your dog linger somewhere he clearly wants to be. But here is the deeper question worth asking. If sniffing were simply a distraction from the real purpose of a walk, why would it be capable of changing a dog's underlying emotional state at all? To understand why scent carries this much weight, you have to understand what your dog's nose is actually capable of, because the gap between his experience of a walk and yours is larger than most owners ever consider. A dog's nose contains somewhere between 200 million and 300 million scent receptors, compared to roughly 6 million in a human nose, and the portion of a dog's brain devoted to processing smell is, proportionally, dozens of times larger than the equivalent region in a human brain. Dogs also have a specialized organ called the vomeronasal organ, tucked at the base of the nasal cavity, capable of detecting pheromones and chemical signals entirely separate from ordinary scent, giving them access to a layer of information about other animals that has no equivalent in human experience at all. That patch of grass you tried to hurry him past was never nothing. It was a dense, layered record of every creature that passed through recently, how long ago, in which direction, in what emotional state, information your own senses are simply incapable of detecting at all. This is where the story starts moving towards something larger than a single walk, because once you understand what a dog's nose is actually doing, the pattern interrupt of every rushed sniff starts to look very different. Translate this into what it actually means for the dog straining gently at the end of that leash. He is not being stubborn, and he is not wasting time. He is reading, in the only language his species has ever had, a full and detailed account of his neighborhood's recent history, and every time you pull him away before he finishes, you are closing the book mid-sentence, over and over, walk after walk, for his entire life. Here is something even more important still ahead, because this is not only about mental stimulation in the abstract. Researchers studying stress and arousal in dogs have found that the physical act of sniffing lowers heart rate measurably, functioning almost like a self-soothing behavior a dog can access on his own, without needing anything from you except time. A dog who spends a portion of every walk engaged in sustained sniffing is not simply gathering information. He is regulating his own nervous system, the same way a person might feel calmer after a slow, quiet walk through somewhere beautiful, except his version of beautiful is written entirely in scent. This reframes what those brisk, purposeful walks most owners take pride in are actually accomplishing. A fast-paced walk covering real distance is genuinely good for a dog's cardiovascular health, and nothing about this discovery argues otherwise. But if every single outing prioritizes distance and pace over the chance to stop, investigate, and process the world through his nose, something essential is missing from his day, every single day, accumulating quietly across months and years into an entire life spent walking past information he was built to need. This is the truth the title of this video has been pointing toward from the very first second. The thing your dog has been waiting his whole life for you to try is not complicated, expensive, or difficult. It is simply this: on at least one walk a day, or even for 10 unhurried minutes tacked onto the walk you already take, let him lead with his nose instead of your schedule. No destination, no pace to maintain, just permission to stop wherever his instincts pull him and stay there as long as he needs. Trainers who work with anxious or understimulated dogs increasingly recommend exactly this, sometimes called a sniff walk or a decompression walk, precisely because it gives a dog access to a form of enrichment no amount of fetch or training drills can replicate. The change costs nothing. It requires no equipment beyond a slightly longer leash and a little more patience than the average errand-run walk allows. Some trainers suggest choosing a specific stretch of the route, a park, a quiet trail, a patch of unfamiliar sidewalk, and simply letting that section belong entirely to your dog's nose, with no correction, no gentle tugging, no glance at your watch, just the two of you standing still while he works through whatever story the ground is telling him that day. For a dog who has spent years being gently but consistently pulled away from the one sense he relies on more than any other, it can be the difference between a walk that simply exercises his body and one that finally lets his entire mind stretch out the way it was built to. So the next time your dog stops at a patch of grass that looks like nothing to you, resist the pull to keep moving, just for a few extra minutes, and watch what happens when he finally gets to finish what he started. That is not stubbornness. That is your dog quietly waiting, walk after walk, year after year, for the one thing he has never been able to ask for in words: permission to experience the world the way he was actually built to. If this changed the way you think about your daily walks, tell me in the comments whether you are going to try a real sniff walk this week, because I want to know how many of you are rethinking this starting today. If this gave you a new way of understanding what your dog actually needs, subscribe, because there is a lot more of this kind of story still to come, and hit like so more owners who have been unknowingly rushing their dog past this every single day can finally learn to slow down.